Joachim, Thomas, congratulations on this new film of your
Thank
Goebbels
you.
Führer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great seeing you.
Well, thank you for making this film. And you know, these historical films are such a wonder because I feel like history always tend to repeat itself, and it's always timely in its own way. But let me start with this first: is how did this film came about? What actually sparked you to make this film in the first place, Joaquin?
Äh, Geht es um die aktuellen Bezüge
Nee, es
oder?
geht darum, wie dieser Film entstanden ist, wie du ursprünglich dazu gekommen bist, diesen Film zu machen. Also letztlich die gleiche Antwort, die gleiche Frage wie vorhin
Genau.
bezüglich, seitdem du 13 bist.
Hast du es in Erinnerung? Dann brauche ich es
Yeah,
gar nicht sagen.
if you don't mind, we just had the same question. So if you don't mind, because I'm doing some translations for Joachim, so I will just give you the answer that he gave 5 minutes ago. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's go. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. So Joachim said that ever since he was 13, he asked himself, growing up in post-war Germany, how was it possible that what he sees as the greatest crime of human history could come about? And most important of all, how it was possible that the majority of the German people came to support that. So ever since he has asked himself, how do you manage, how is it possible to mobilize majority of a population for something of this kind? This has been the most important question that has been with him ever since. And for that reason, in a way, this film really has been, it's not just any film for him, but really it's been a film that has been decades in the making.
Well said. Well said. Now, they made films about Joseph in the past. So how is this film different from other films out there? And is there anything new that was presented in this film?
Ich würde
Also,
zwei,
ja,
hm?
okay. Ja, sag. Ja.
Ich würde zwei Punkte nennen, was neu ist. Einmal, es geht wirklich um die Grundmuster von Demagogie und Populismus zu entziffern, eben mit dem Ziel, auch die Parallelen zur Gegenwart zu zeigen, dass man resistenter gegenüber heutigen Verführungen wird. Es ist ein Film gegen Verführung. Und das Zweite ist, wir zeigen ein neues Bild, weil wir nicht die Schablonen, die plakative Dämonen zeigen, sondern weil wir sie als Menschen zeigen, was sie waren. Und damit kommen wir näher an die Wirklichkeit. Wir zeigen, wie verführt wurde, mit dem Ziel, dass nie wieder verführt werden kann. Vielleicht das Dritte könnte man noch sagen, der Punkt, dass wir die historischen Dokumente als das nehmen, was sie sind, Inszenierungen von Goebbels. Wir setzen diese Inszenierung nicht fort, sondern wir dekonstruieren sie, um einen Blick hinter die Kulissen, um näher an die Wirklichkeit zu kommen. Also die drei Punkte fallen mir ein.
Mhm. So there are several things that are new. One is really that this is about the patterns of disinformation and demagoguery. In that sense, it's also very much, of course, a film for the present. It's a film against manipulation. It's against demagoguery. It's against disinformation. So there, we can't really think of a film on either Goebbels or Hitler in the past that have attempted to do that. And I personally may also add is that there have actually recently not been that many serious films about Hitler or Goebbels. This is, in a way, this is the first serious feature film in 20 years about either man. There have in between been all kinds of comedies or whether they're somewhere on the sidelines, but this is the first year in 20 years where they take center stage. The next point would be to say that the film is actually trying to not to kind of understand these two men as demons, as paper cutout villains, but to take them seriously as humans, because ultimately it's far more kind of scary if you realize that humans can do something of this kind. And therefore also we start the film with this only secret recording of Hitler, where you hear him in a kind of pleasant voice, to really immediately show to the audience that the images that they endlessly see on documentaries and History Channel and so on, that they are actually products of Nazi propaganda. And so that what the film is doing, it's actually destroying those that staging, or rather it shows to the people that the document, that the images that we all have in our head and that we think are the kind of the essence of the genuine Hitler and Goebbels, that they're Nazi propaganda creations, that we're in a way still the late victims or the unwilling followers of Hitler and Goebbels, in constantly repeating that kind of imagery. And so the film is really trying to show how the images that we endlessly use are these creations. And the last one may want to add, which is when we did this in Berlin before the film was being released, we did this public event on this World Wars of Disinformation and Demagoguery. And El Ben Moshe, an Israeli scholar and the foremost scholar on the staging of Hitler, she said this film is totally new because this film is really bringing to Hitler and the Holocaust together, which weirdly has never been done before. So either they're filming the Second World War and Hitler and so on, or they're Holocaust movies. And she said this is the first movie, the first feature film that is really bringing Hitler and the Holocaust together.
Well said. Question for you, Thomas. How much involvement did you have on this film and in an advisory role, or did you just watch it?
I was just going to joke that is of course a secret, but no, of course it isn't a secret. No, I was the closely involved in I guess because historical consultants do. Second of all, because this is of course a particularly sensitive topic, and I think third of all, it's fair to say that Joachim and I quickly realized that together, also with the dramaturg and co-producer Sandra Djumovic, that we got along extremely well and that we bounced ideas off each other. So I don't want to take credits for anything because Joachim is obviously the filmmaker, but in that sense, at every stage of the creation, we bounced ideas off each other. So obviously I read the scripts and I commented on them, but we also discussed on how to portray Hitler, how to portray Goebbels, and subsequently what we can take away from this and how this actually relates to about the parallels between the past and the present. But at the end of the day, my role was, of course, to advise. Of course, at the end of the day, these are all Joachim's decisions.
Absolutely. And Thomas or Joachim could answer this question: is how important is it for a film like this to be very accurate historically?
Okay, Joachim, jetzt was dazu sagen?
Nee, sag du zuerst.
Okay. It's of course extremely important to be accurate about a film. I mean, it should be accurate always. And of course, you couldn't get away just like with the Napoleon film to kind of almost as a provocation to say, who cares what historians do? You should never do that. But obviously, you couldn't do that with something like Hitler. And it would be unethical to do so. But of course, the question then becomes, what actually defines accuracy? Is accuracy that every single line has been said in this way, or is accuracy that generally the historical interpretations are correct? And we really made sure that in a way it would work on both levels, so that in a way the process here is not that different from writing for me as a historian, a scholarly history book, because at the end of the day, there are so many gaps where also as a scholar, you have got to figure out what is based on the best evidence, what is the likely explanation from how this development over time happened, And then you've got to explain why this is the most likely scenario. But you might say, look, it might have been factor 1, 1, 2, or 3. While here, as a filmmaker, you can't say, look, we have now 3 different possibilities, but you have to go for the most plausible one of the 3 ones. But in a way, you could create a film script that actually has exactly the same footnotes as a history book would have that I would write about Hitler and Goebbels. Do you want to add to that, Joachim?
Perfekt gesagt, das ist auch ganz toll erklärt, ja.
Okay, Joachim says he agrees.
Joachim, tell us about the challenges of creating a narrative dialogue for a film like this to fill in the blanks of something that that they have destroyed, evidence or records of to fulfill a film like this.
Also über die Herausforderungen sprechen könntest, wenn man Dialoge schreiben müsste, bei denen natürlich man häufig nicht genau weiß, was gewesen ist. Also wie man die Lücken ausfüllt. Was sind die Herausforderungen, so einen Dialog zu schreiben?
Natürlich haben wir unendlich viele Materialien. Wir haben die Goebbels-Tagebücher und es ist natürlich im Englischen schwer zu übersetzen, aber es ist ein Deutsch, das wir nicht gebrauchen würden. Gefühlsakrobat, das sind Wortschöpfungen. Wir versuchen möglichst nah an diese Sprache und an die Dialoge zu kommen. Aber das glaube ich, das ist gelungen und auch auf die tiefere Wahrheit einzugehen. Aber die Herausforderung ist, vor der Geschichte und vor den Überlebenden zu bestehen, weil es ist einem jederzeit bewusst, dass wir hier eine große Frage der Geschichte verhandeln mit 6 Millionen ermordeten Juden. Und mich hat es vor allem im Schnitt sehr belastet. Und als ich dann die ganzen Holocaust-Aufnahmen raussuchen musste, habe ich mir eine Woche genommen, um alles rauszusuchen. Da konnte ich nicht mehr schlafen. Das hat mich wirklich an Rand von meinen Kräften gebracht. Also ich glaube, das war für mich die schwierigste Herausforderung, da gerecht zu werden den Opfern. Und ja, für mich in dieser Intensität kann man vielleicht nur einen Film machen, weil es ist wirklich die zentrale Frage der Geschichte.
Joachim was saying for him this has been the most intensive or taxing film of his life, precisely also because of the process of both researching this and trying to figure out how you can fill in the gaps, but also once you have created this narrative and you filmed it and you then look for the right kind of footage for that. I mean, you've seen that the film is intersected with original film footage, and even just seeing this for a week has said it's been the most taxing week of his life. And but he said that basically what he always asked himself is, what is the ethical thing here towards survivors? How will they respond to this? And more broadly, in terms of filling these gaps, it's of course ultimately I've got to figure out how do you create the highest degree of probability and plausibility for a dialogue, and you do that by looking at all the surviving evidence. And with Goebbels, there is of course endless surviving evidence, including his thousands and thousands of pages of a diary. And even if you do not know what he said on day X or Y, you read all of that to kind of get into his head and also to understand his language. His language was quite different from the way we would speak today in German. And so that you could then, based on that, you can fill out the gap in an ethically responsible way that fulfills the criteria of the highest degree of plausibility and probability. And again, and all always thinking about the ethical responsibility towards victims.
Well said, well said. And let's round this out to tell us about the discovery of your cast to have them portray perfectly on the personalities of Goebbels and Hitler.
Also wie du, so hast du verstanden, ja.
Für mich stand von Anfang an die Besetzung von Robert Stadlober fest. Mit dem habe ich schon andere Filme gemacht. Einmal hat er Kurt Weill gespielt. Er ist der Beste. Und für diesen. Das andere ist, was ja wahnsinnig schwierig ist in Deutschland oder überhaupt auf der Welt, Hitler zu spielen, ist unser Hitler-Darsteller, den habe ich erreicht an einem Parkplatz und da hat er gesagt, er hat schon immer auf diese Rolle gewartet. Fritz wurde gecastet in einem Film und die wollten eben mich diesen Dämon und er hat gesagt, er hat sich sein Leben lang mit ihm beschäftigt, weil er 30 Kilometer daneben aufgewachsen ist und er kann die Feinheiten des Dialekts und dieser Art, was wir auch bei der Mannerheim-Rede, bei der Mannerheim-Aufnahme sehen, wunderbar herausarbeiten. Deswegen ist es eine völlig neue Hitler-Darstellung, die Fritz Karl da geboten hat. Und als drittes ist Franziska Weiß, die man natürlich sehr kühl nur spielen kann. Wie spielt man eine Frau, die ihre Kinder umbringt für eine Ideologie? Und es ist ihr einfühlend gelungen, wie sie leidet, wie sie aber trotzdem es tut und man sieht diese Verblendung am Schluss, was dann sie nur noch abstoßend macht. Also ich bin total happy mit allen drei, mit dem Hauptcast.
So Joachim said that for him from the beginning, it had been clear that Robert Stadlober was his choice for Goebbels. He's been working with him before, and for him, it was absolutely clear he has what it takes. He's the best in order to really translate Goebbels in a way that that is genuine and responsible. With Hitler, it's very difficult to cast someone for Hitler, in part because this goes back to something we said earlier. We all have these kind of paper cutout villain, this kind of one-dimensional guy who always shouts and screams, the kind of propaganda product. And people are then also being cast that way, and he wanted to avoid that. And he finally came to talk to Fritz Karl, who said that he had been waiting for this for years and years. He grew up 30 kilometers from Hitler's birthplace, and so in a way this has also been with him, but he also has got all in terms of the regional language and so on. He really understands how you would portray Hitler, but he had resisted earlier casting. In fact, he had been cast for a different film, but then he turned it down because, again, they just wanted him as this kind of shouting demon. And once he realized that Joachim wants the Hitler that is in line with, for instance, a secret recording where Hitler speaks quite softly, or this kind of explanation of how the unstaged Hitler looked like. He said, "This is the film I've been waiting on for years." So so then the role was his. And then lastly, he also talked about really the difficulty of casting Magda Goebbels to find someone who could believably portray someone who would kill her own children, who would be quite a kind of, on one hand, a kind of a cold person, but at the same time that you could still create her as a believable character and also understand why people saw what people saw in her, to also not just make her a kind of one-dimensional villain, so that people would at the same time, by watching her, people would feel empathy and repulsion at the same time. And that is also why he chose Franziska Weiß, because of her extraordinary talents in that way. And I think we are both extremely delighted that there are actors who really try to square the circle, where an audience can feel empathy, but at the same time repulsion.
Well said. Well, let me wrap it up with one last question here. As audiences have a chance to watch Goebbels and the Führer, what is the conclusion, the feeling that we should take away after watching your film?
Ich glaube, es wäre unser Ziel erreicht, wenn man am Beispiel der Propagandamethoden, am Beispiel des Dritten Reichs von Demagogie erkennt, wie die Mechanismen funktionieren, um heutige Demagogen zu entschlüsseln und ihnen die Maske vom Gesicht zu reißen. Und deswegen ist es ein Film gegen Verführung. Was der Zuschauer mitnehmen kann, ist, dass man alles, was man sieht, kritisch betrachtet, hinterfragt, wer hat es gemacht, eben mit dem Ziel, nicht wieder verführbar zu sein, dass sowas nie wieder passiert.
Um, the hope is that the audience will see the film as an example to understand the patterns of demagoguery, to understand the mechanisms of demagoguery and disinformation and propaganda, so that they also in their own world see demagoguery and disinformation when they see it, that they can decode it, that they can, and that would allow them to rip off the mask of demagogues and today, and that also the hope would be that as a result of this film, people will generally be more critical towards anything around them, towards any document that they read, towards any kind of statement by a politician that they see, that they will always self-critically ask themselves, what am I seeing here? So it's really a film against manipulation, against this kind of propaganda, against this kind of political seduction, in order to make sure that that what happened at the time will never repeat itself.
Well said. Gentlemen, thank you very much for carrying this conversation about your film. It is riveting and interesting all the way from start to finish, and we learn a lot about on how this all played out. So thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.